So today, guys, we're going to be building a 12-volt regulator. A 12-volt regulated power supply, actually. And the reason we're doing it is because we're going to use it for my Goal Zero cigarette adapter port. Now, if any of you are familiar with Goal Zero and some of the other power supply or power adapters or solar power adapters, whatever you call them, some of the models do not have a regulated cigarette outlet. So what that means is when you plug something into the 12-volt outlet, you're working off of the battery voltage. And in Goal Zero's case, when that battery goes down, it can go as low as around 9.6 volts. And the reason that's not good is because you have certain appliances that need 12 volts to run, and they'll turn off when they get to a certain level. And in my situation, I have a 12-volt small refrigerator that shuts off. So I don't get the full capacity of the Goal Zero because it'll shut off somewhere around the 10.2 mark. And that refrigerator actually has settings that allow the low voltage to go below 12, but unfortunately they don't go as low as 9. So what we bought here, and I should say the reason I'm doing this is because for a couple reasons. One, I like to experiment and play. And two, this costs a lot less than what the Goal Zero's adapter cost. So if you go out online and you look at the Goal Zero 12 volt regulated adapter, you'll see that it's $40. And if you look here, now this is on eBay. I paid $11 and free shipping. And then over here, this is for the 12-volt regulator. And why I got this one is because it can go as low as 8 volts on the input side, and I don't need up to 80 volts on the output side, but I just need around 13.2, we'll set it at, give or take. So $11 here, and then I needed a cigarette adapter that was $3. So, and I also bought a little plastic case to put it in. So what we're going to do here in a few minutes is we're going to take this adapter, we're going to cut it in half, we're going to strip the ends, we're going to put the input side on, the output side on. Maybe I should flip this around. I think this is the input side, this is the output side, and we're going to basically put this inside here. We're going to cut this in half, we're going to drill 2 holes in here, we're going to secure this in, we're going to put 2 holes over here, we're going to put that out. And then we're going to connect it all up and we'll show you how it all works. Okay, I've assembled the 12-volt regulator inside this little box. And I put my hot glue over here. And put my hot glue over here. And I went ahead and adjusted it for around 12.9 volts. So it should be able to input anywhere between 8 and whatever. And output 12.9. So we're going to test this, and this is the fridge I was talking about earlier. It's an Alpico, and basically it can run on 12 volts or 24 volts. And I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. Now I want to show you something. The Goal Zero is already at 69%, so I took it down a little so you can see the problem. So I'm just going to kind of show you where the voltage sits. So you can see we're at 11.4, and that's before we even start. And what we're going to do is, I believe we can see what the voltage is over here once we plug it in and turn it on. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. We're just going to plug it right into the Yeti without the 12-volt regulator. And you can see, again, why I'm putting this in, because I really want the voltage to be at 12.9, give or take. And I'm already at 11.4 at 70%. And like I said earlier, when this drops down, the lower this percentage goes, the lower the voltage goes. And I've seen it go down into the 9 volts, and it just shuts off the fridge. So we'll go ahead and plug this in. And we'll come over here. Hopefully the light's not too bright. Now you can see over on the, and I just heard the fridge kick on, but you can see we're 10.7 and we're 11.3, and obviously we've got some losses. Believe this is, I can't remember the gauge. I originally was just going to basically swap the cable and put in 10 gauge and make it smaller, because I think it's 8 foot of cable, which obviously there's enough resistance in there to lower it a little bit, but you can kind of see the problem already. You know, we're at 10.7, and over here we're at 11.3, and it just gets lower and lower and shuts off eventually. So what I wanted to see is how many amps this is drawing. So you can see we're drawing 2.2 amps and 24 watts. So what we'll go ahead and do now is we will just unplug this, and then we'll plug in the regulator and then show the difference. So I'm just going to go ahead and unplug this, and obviously that'll shut off. And then what we're going to do now is plug the 12 volt regulated outlet in. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and you can see this light comes on. And now this outlet here should be hot. And I should also point out, one of the reasons I bought this particular cigarette outlet is it has a fused outlet in it. So inside the tip there's a 10 amp fuse. So if you take 10 amps times 12 volts, it's 120 watts. It'll let through without blowing the fuse. So I can't go over 120 watts. I don't need to go over 120 watts. Generally, you don't need to go over 120 watts with a cigarette outlet application. But the wire, it advertised it as 12 gauge wire, and I think it's actually 16 gauge wire when I actually look. But again, 16 gauge wire is fine enough for this application. I might get a little loss, if I'm starting out at 12.9, it might take it down to, I don't know, 12.4, but still a lot better, and it should stay at 12.4. So I just kind of want to show you that I'm still sitting at 11.4. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug it in here, plug in the fridge back in. So I'm back over here on the fridge, and you can see now the difference. I'm sitting at 12.6, 12.2 even now, it's just kicked on. And let's just take a look at my amperage. So notice that the amperage went up, right? Now why is that? Well, that is for a few reasons, but the number one reason probably is because of the losses in the conversion. So these things aren't 100% efficient by any means, and they do range on the efficiency range from upper 90s to mid 80s depending on what you're converting from and to, and how many amps you're using. I'm at the 2.2 amps and 26 watts. So before I was at 24 watts, now I'm at 25, maybe 26. So I'm using maybe 2 extra watts, and that's what's consuming it. So not a big difference in my opinion. 2 watts is very acceptable. But you can kind of see over here, I'm sitting at 12. It bounces between 12.4, 12.3, and 12.2. But the big difference is, as you look, we're at, it thinks we're almost at a full battery. Full battery is anywhere between 12.6 and 12.8, depending on who you ask and what resources you look at. But the great news is this should not go really below 12 volts now. And that's because I'm regulating the power. And what I'll do is I'll cut back in. I'm going to leave this running. We're at 68%, and I may just to make this experiment go a little faster, I may turn on the 120 volt inverter and plug something very small into that, because what I'm trying to do is just get this down into the 30-40%, so you can kind of see how this is regulating. So you can see we jumped up to 30 watts because this does use about 4 to 5 watts when nothing's plugged into it, and that is why a lot of people do not use the 120 volt side to run the refrigerators, and that's because it just wastes too much by converting DC to AC and then really back to DC. So I'm going to run this on the 12 volt. And now that I have the regulator, and again, one of the reasons I went with this is because the Goal Zero regulator was $40. I didn't want to spend $40 on a regulator, so spent a total of $13. Probably could have got it for less if I shopped around. I got this on eBay. I probably could have got it one of the other Chinese websites for, maybe I could have got 2 for that price. I don't know. But for what I'm doing and what I'm using it for, I think it's a great purchase, and being that it's DIY, I love that. And this looks kind of silly, but eventually when I can find a metal case that would fit in nicely, I'll go ahead and swap it out. But for now I kind of wanted to protect it, so I hot glued the regulator board to the bottom of the plastic so it doesn't shake around inside. And this will hold up for what I need until I can find something better. But just going back over here, you can see we're still at 12.3. You know, again, 12.1 to 12.4. It's probably going to stay around there. And there is some adjustment knobs. I'll show you here. I'll kind of tell you what these are if you haven't seen them. There are some other videos that go into what these are. But this here is the output voltage. I can set that to really whatever I want. I can set it to 13, 14. This particular fridge will go up to 24 volts, but this because it works on, you know, really 12 volt battery or 24 volt battery. But I have no need really to take this because most of the applications coming out of here, I just want this port regulated. And so, but that's what that particular screw does there. That actually is the current, so I could adjust the current. I don't really need to go much higher than what it's at because this thing runs right around a little over 2 amps. But I could either raise or lower it with that switch there. And this here's an interesting feature. This is kind of like a low battery cutoff. So the Yeti will actually shut off when it gets to 0 or around 0. But if I had it disconnected straight to a battery that had no management, I could use this as a cutoff, and I could set that for, let's just say on a lead acid battery, I didn't want it to go below 50%. So I could technically set that for the low set point of, you know, maybe that was whatever, 12.2, but when it's under load, it's going to go to a little lower than that. Let's just say I set this for, I don't know, 11. So what would happen is after it hit 11 volts, it would shut this circuitry off. So what's the purpose of that? Well, that's so you don't kill the battery. If you don't have any management system on the battery, you'll say, hey, only draw it down this low and then shut off. It's kind of a really nice feature to have if you're, you know, just connecting these two LEDs right into a battery without something that can really control it. So again, what we're going to do here is I'll try to get this down lower and then I'll come back in. What time is it now? It is around 9 in the morning. And what I'll do is let this run for a while. Hopefully, you know, this will get down into 30 degrees. This may take a while to go down to 30 degrees, but we'll let it run. And then once I prove this out, I'm gonna charge the Yeti all the way up. And by the way, this is a Yeti 1000 lithium. So what I'll do at some point is charge the Yeti all the way up, and then I'll do a run by leaving this plugged in and only this plugged in, and we'll see how long the Yeti 1000 can run this refrigerator. Okay guys, what I've done to speed this along is to hook this heater up. I think level 1 is, I want to say somewhere around 500 watts, I can't remember. Let's take a look. So now we're drawing 500 watts, which will drain this battery relatively quickly. So if we look at the hours remaining, you see we're at 1.5, so it'll drain it down really quick at 500 watts. So what I wanted to do was kind of see if that draw affects the voltage on the 12 volt side. I don't think it's going to. Just to show you, we're at 10.9 volts now. You can see it's obviously getting lower. We're using 45 amps of DC power. And if you come over here, now this obviously is not on right now because it's at 31 degrees, but when it jumps up, and what I guess I could do is open it up and make it come on. So you can see we're at 12.6. I'm just going to open the lid to see. It's kind of about the same, 32. Got 2 cans of soda in here just to kind of keep it stable. Let it absorb some of the cold that I'm creating into the cans. And so this will climb up now, and then this will come on. So what we will do is we will just watch this for a few minutes. Once this warms up in here, this will kick back on, and that should drop down to about 12.2, whatever it was before, 12.1, 12.2, 12.3. But you can see, and we'll just kind of maybe come back, give that a few minutes to warm up. But you can kind of see over here, we're at 10.8 volts. So the converter is, I'm sorry, the regulator is actually working. I think this is actually called a DC to DC boost converter. See, it's actually doing its job. We're still at 12.6. And that is 12.6 where we sit, where it's measuring it through all these wires. So it's coming through the Yeti to the boost converter out there, and we're probably talking about 9 foot of total wire. And then as it goes into the Alpicool refrigerator. Okay, it just kicked on. So it went to, actually, kind of interesting. Went to 10.2, which is way lower than what I thought it was going to do. I'm just going to shut off the, I shut off the heater to see what it would do. And it brought it up, which is really interesting of a test. I'm guessing, and I'm not sure why that just happened. I would have thought that it would have still stayed at 12.6, you know, around there. I think it turned itself back off. I don't know why it did, but just gonna wait a minute here and try to do it the reverse. Well, that was interesting because I was only at 10.7 over here. Now, what's possible that I guess I didn't check was, and I think I know what happened. I think that voltage may have been low enough to shut this off. Okay guys, I figured out what the issue was. The issue is the low voltage cutoff. So it must have been set to somewhere around 10.8, 10.6. And so what it was doing is it really was not allowing anything to go through this side. So I screwed that to the right down, and if you can take a look now, you'll see the fridge is running. And if you also look here, I'm at 23% with 10.2 volts. So I'm on 10.2 on the input, and I'm running 12.5 on the output. And we'll just wait a few seconds here. I can't tell if the compressor is on or not. I just came back after walking away from it for a few minutes trying to figure out why it wasn't working. And that's exactly why it wasn't working, because this was not set low enough. So I did crank it down. I don't know where it's going to cut out at, so I might have to adjust it again. But right now it's sitting at 10.2, and over here I'm at 12.4. So it's running. I can feel it getting cooler, and what I'm going to do is just shut it right now, and just so that the temperature is able to cool down, because it is about 72 in the house right now. So I'm happy about that, that it actually just was an adjustment that I needed to make. I honestly don't know where the amperages are set here. I guess what I could probably do is get an incandescent bulb or something, light it up, and then adjust the amperage to pull in probably somewhere around, I guess, 8 amps maybe. I wouldn't want it to go more than that, because I don't want it to get over 120 watts in case if I decide to use this for something else. But right now this thing only draws, you saw the amperage. What I'm gonna do is I'll shut this off real quick so we can kind of show you what it's doing. So it's running right around 3.5 amps, 37 watts right now. The voltage is at 10.6, and over here you see it's at 12.4. And why I was hooking up the heater was so I can try to get the battery down, so we can see if it works when the battery's in a low state. I'm going to try to take it down even lower, you know, possibly around 10 to 5%. I'm not going to let it go much lower than 5% before I charge it back up, but I'm happy that it is working. This regulator is doing the trick, and I'm all the way down to 10.5 volts. The most I've seen this Yeti go is I think 9.5 volts, somewhere around there. So that'll be the real test to see if we can still drive this at 9.5 volts. You can see that the temperature went down, so it's running right now. And that'll go down to in the 30s in a few minutes. So what I'm gonna do is turn the heater back on, and we'll see what's going on. Okay, so you can see now we're down to 10.3. What we have here now, just to show you, is I ran the Yeti down to almost nothing. So you can see we're sitting at 0%. We're at 9.9 volts. And actually what had happened was, because I was trying to drain this down with the heater, I caused it to go into an overheat situation. You can see the temperature was too high on the Yeti, so it shut the inverter portion off. And you can hear the fan on it right now. But what I was trying to do was get the voltage as low as I possibly could. So what I wanted to do was get it on the low side so we can see this boost converter in action. So right now you can see we're at 10. We're going through the male cigarette lighter adapter into the boost converter, and over here is where you control the output of the boost converter. And if you follow this down, it goes down to the cigarette adapter, and then it plugs in to the refrigerator, and it goes into the DC side of the refrigerator. And let's take a look at the control panel. So we're sitting right now at 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're at 12.8 volts. So the beautiful thing about this setup is we can now utilize this Yeti or any other power supply like the Yeti that is unregulated. I think the Jackery is a regulated 13.2 volts on the DC side, so you wouldn't necessarily need a setup like this, but there's a lot out there that have the exact same configuration as the Yeti on the 12 volt port, where it's unregulated. And what that means is the voltage here is what the voltage of the battery is. So this cigarette outlet is 10 volts. Well, 10 volts works for a lot of DC appliances, but on these refrigerators and the Dometic, the Alpicool, the ones that will shut off at a certain temperature, and this actually has a setting in it where you can set the voltage to go lower than 12. I think this is actually like a 10.8. This will shut off at 10.8, but the problem is when the Yeti gets to 10.8, I still have about 50% of the battery left, and the purpose is to get all the battery that I can before this shuts off. So I believe we have a good solution here.